Hi, Anna.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Let me introduce us. I'm Robert Wright of Blogging Heads TV. This is an episode of Worldwise in which we usually talk to people in other countries other than the United States. And you are in Mexico.
I am.
You're Ana Francisca Vega. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm a journalist in Mexico. I specialize in technology, but this has been going on for the past few years. But before that, I used to do just general information. But I'm a political scientist as well,
I see.
and so I'm a journalist.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I want to talk to you about a few things, maybe including technology, but I wanted to start out with a kind of a strange case that has shaken up Mexico of about 43 students, college students, who are missing, thought to have been abducted, and feared to be dead. Can you explain to us how this started out?
Sure. Well, as you probably know, there's been war on drugs in Mexico since 2006, since President Felipe Calderón started it when he started his administration. And it has been going on for all these years. The case of the missing students in Iguala is has shaken the public opinion in a sense that not I mean previous cases there were missing people from 2006 until now. There were a lot of missing people. In fact, there were about 22,000 missing people in Mexico since 2006. In the Felipe Calderón's administration, there were 13,000 missing, and in Enrique Peña Nieto's administration, which is currently the current administration, there are about 8,000 people missing. So this is a pattern. This is not something that's isolated. What
And
changed?
these are all thought to be missing as a result of the drug thing. They're either killed
Yes.
by drug lords or
Yeah, and the drug issue has changed in these years as well. I mean, we're not talking just about drugs right now. We're talking about big organized crime organizations that deal with many sorts of crimes, not only drugs. So yes, but basically yes. What changed in this case is that these guys are students. They're 43 students. They were very they came from very humble origins. Most of them were sons of peasants in Mexico. This particular school is a school that prepares teachers that go to rural areas. So these are very humble people, and this particular school has a story of being very leftist, very combative. They have a very strong history of social mobilization. But these were very young people. These are very young people because we presume they're missing. We don't presume they're dead. What changed is that in this case, the police was directly involved in their disappearance. And not only the police, but also the local authorities, elected authorities. So that sort of changed the way that people related to this issue and related to the issue of violence.
and I guess the assumption is that this is a case where the organized crime, the drug lords, whatever, was so strong in this area that they basically control the police and the politicians. That's the idea?
Yes, and I mean, of course, yes. What's been going on in the last few years in Mexico is that organized crime has changed from being a solely economic endeavor, so to speak, to try to grab as much political power as they can. So what has been going on is that they took counties. Iguala is a county, um, and these are very vulnerable local governments, with very fragile institutions. So what they do, and there are several academic studies that are right now. You can read them, you can go through them. That these organized crime groups have appropriated, in a sense, local governments. There's many cases that are documented, for example, that organized crime took almost 30% of public money in counties in Michoacán state, for example. That's 30% of the money that, our taxes are going almost directly to organized crime. They demand to be given contracts at the local government, at the local level, and around 20% of local salaries go to organized crime. That's how weak local governments are. So you cannot really make a clear distinction between authorities and gangs and organized crime right now in many counties in Mexico.
Okay.
That's what happened in Iguala.
Okay, so in this case, I gather the students, as you said, there's a kind of a left-wing history at this particular teachers' college. They were going to have a protest against some government policies that were related to education and to teachers. And they did something that I guess is a little bit of a tradition. I mean, it had been done before, which is that they actually kind of commandeered some buses, some I guess public buses. And the way this works is, okay, that's like technically not legal, I guess. But in the past they had done it, and then they would usually return the buses, and it's like not a capital crime. It's kind of understood that that's what they do. Is that right so far?
Yes. That's
to get to the demonstration.
Yes.
They needed the buses. Okay.
Yes, they needed the buses, and they usually grab the buses, and they usually return the buses as well. And it happens not only in Iguala, but it happens all around the country. That's sort of the way that many people go to demonstrations. Of course, it's illegal. But nobody really does anything about it.
You don't usually kill them for it, right? But
of course not.
But in this case, some of them were actually shot on the spot, right? I mean, there was.
What happened is that they were in the buses. They were coming to Mexico City. They were going to participate in a demonstration commemorating the killing of students in 1968 regime. So they were coming to Mexico City, and the police stopped them, and they basically came back. They basically were being got shot at the spot. 6 were shot at the spot, and then 43 were grabbed by the police. I took them, and they disappeared. So yes, some of them survived. We have testimonies of those students, but most of them were kidnapped.
And then there was subsequently the discovery of a mass grave in the area with 28 bodies or something that for a while they thought were the bodies of the students, but I gather that turned out not to be the case.
Yes, and it's worse than that, because since that date, which was September 26th, they've discovered about 9 or 10 graves, clandestine graves around the place. And that's just the scope of what's been going on in Mexico. I mean, those 22,000 people missing have to be somewhere, right? So right now we're discovering that, well, at least some of them are, there. The students are still missing, but there are many people dead. And it's not only in Iguala, it's all around the place. They discovered just a few weeks ago some mass graves in Estado de Mexico as well, which is another state which has been attacked by organized crime as well. So they had to be somewhere, right? So
right. So, I mean, kind of sadly, the discovery of a mass grave is just not a big surprise in a certain sense. I mean, that's it. It happens, and moreover, you just kind of know there have to be mass graves in a way all over Mexico, given the number of people who have disappeared.
Yes, a very sad thing about this story as well is that well they said these are not the students, you know, in this grave, but nobody really asked who were they. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think it's just overwhelming for most of us.
So the presumption is that what kinds of people would be in that mass grave? I mean, they're people who must have gotten on the wrong side of the kind of the organized crime and the government that's run by the organized crime in that area, right? They must have. What kinds of things do you do to get killed? I mean, what kinds of things do they kill you for?
I don't think they kill you for much, actually. I don't think you have to be involved in any sort of crime to get killed. And the 43 students, we presume they're missing, but they might be dead as well. They didn't do anything besides, demonstrating against the status quo. And I think that's the shocking part of it is that organized crime just is actually silencing everyone that, in some sense, tries to do something about things. Just this morning we woke up to the news that a woman from the north, from a northern state, was killed by organized crime. She was from Reynosa, which is also was the capital of Tamaulipas, which is Reynosa is a place where a lot of violence has been going on and gone as well. And she was killed because she had a Twitter account, or she contributed to a Twitter account that just tried to get some sense of what was going on, and tried to inform people about security incidents around Reynosa. And that was it. And she was killed.
Yeah. Now, I guess one irony, I mean, my impression is that these students were to the extent that they were protesting, it was more about federal government policies, right? And the federal government is actually kind of the enemy of these local kind of thugs, the organized crime, right? I mean, and in fact, I think one of the current president, Enrique Pena Nieto's accomplishments is that he has had some big drug lords, a few big drug lords arrested, right? He has managed to arrest some big drug lords. So I guess it's a little confusing to me if the students are protesting against the federal government is the enemy of the thugs. Why are the thugs killing and apprehending the students?
Because, as I said before, this particular school, Ayotzinapa is called, is a very active school in terms of community awareness, and they try to protect, the people from rural areas, from the factic powers acting upon them. So they're very active in terms of the community, and it doesn't really matter if they were coming to the to the capital to demonstrate. They were just very active in their own community, and they were very they demonstrated constantly against the local authorities, the state authorities. So it was not really something about who is to blame in that case in terms of what they were going to demonstrate against. They were constantly demonstrating against local governments as well.
Right, okay. So I assume the federal government is investigating this case, right? How far has that gotten?
Not very far. I think Enrique Peña Nieto is really worried about this case, though, because it has transcended frontiers, and it's all over the international press. And as a very intelligent political analyst said in Mexico last week, this is the end of Peña's illusion that Mexico was going forward in terms of the reforms that were taking place. And for at least a couple of years, violence was not really an issue in terms of the public agenda. But right now, what we see is that violence is at the center of everything, and that Enrique Peña's effort to try to mask this in a sense, because I think it was a very explicit strategy from his part and his team's part, just didn't, could not be sustained anymore. So he just yesterday there was a big security meeting with all the persons that were involved, and he said that they were going to investigate until the last consequences. The mayor of Iguala is on the run, as well as his wife,
right,
and several local authorities are in the run. So we'll see in the next few weeks if they catch them, if the state governor renounces. That's going to be something else as well. But I have to say that people are really skeptic about this.
So when you say Pena Nieto had been trying to mask this, you mean he had been trying to cover up this incident, or just kind of trying to distract attention from the fact of ongoing violence in general, or what?
I think it was a concealed effort to change the public perception of violence and to change the focus and to direct it to a discourse of we're going forward. This is the reforms are useful. Mexico is moving. His slogan is "Let's move Mexico," and you remember the Time magazine cover. Saving Mexico, President Nieto. So that was the emphasis for about 2 years, and it was in a sense it was good for him he could do it, not anymore.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that his having arrested these several big drug lords isn't really that consequential? I mean, it is, I guess, more than had been done in the past, maybe, but does it not really amount to much in terms of addressing the real problem?
I think so. The problem is so big that that's a very difficult question to ask, Bob. But, I mean, of course, getting the big lords is good. Nobody would say otherwise. The problem is that what we're seeing right now is that even if you grab every big drug lord, things are not gonna improve for common Mexicans, because there's no rule of law, there's no institutions, there's no law and order in Mexico. You commit a crime, and it's very possible that you'll get away with it. And as long as that is not addressed, things are not going to change.
Because you can bribe your way out of it, you mean?
Yeah, or, you never get investigated. Who are these 28 guys that were in the mass grave? Nobody knows. Nobody cares. And even if you care as a normal citizen, what do you do? When you see the amount of people, for example, that are being kidnapped, and how many people are being mugged in the streets, and just regular crime that's somehow related to organized crime, but it's not directly related to organized crime, you see that there are no consequences of your actions. So as long as that's not addressed, it's not going to improve.
And is there an obvious way to address it, or is the problem so big that it's really not clear what you would do if you were president, or even if you were in charge of all federal policies? It's not clear what you would do to solve the problem.
I think there are steps that you can take in the right direction. This is a problem that's not going to be solved in 5 or 10 years, of course. But I think there are several steps that you can take. For example, you could have re-elections in Mexico, for example, make people accountable at the local level. You could improve transparency laws. You can improve the conditions in which judges at the local level are taking the decisions. I think it's a matter of putting the resources where they're needed and not where they're politically useful for people, if you know what I mean. I mean, right now, political parties have not had the incentive to do that because they just want to keep on, with the same status quo. But I think you could actually make very important steps towards it.
And is there a chance that this one incident is so outraging the public that it could lead to real change of the kind you're describing?
I'm hopeful it has. I mean, I'm hopeful it is. There are several, for the first time in many years, I see, for example, universities around the country demonstrating and asking, in a very emphatical way, we want the 43 students back and we want them alive. Mm-hmm. And I'm very optimistic about the power of the youth. I hope they can provoke change in a way that we haven't been able to older generations. But I'm not sure. I mean, people are scared. People are just trying to survive day to day. So I'm not sure. I hope it does, but I'm not sure.
It seems to me this is what makes it so hard to figure out how to address it. I mean, if in every town any judge or prosecutor or whatever, who stands up against this stuff has a real risk of being killed, that makes it hard, right, to get stuff done.
Yes, I mean, we've seen it with judges, we've seen it with journalists all around, Mexico, which are making, very brave reporting. They sometimes get killed or they just disappear. So yes, it's very, 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 very difficult if, as you say, people are basically left by themselves locally.
So Pena Nieto, in addition to kind of claiming that he's doing something about the drug lords, I guess his other big claim is that he's making progress on the economic front. He I guess did a series of reforms. I mean, in the sense of, I don't know, I gather it was like deregulation. The kind of thing that tends to attract foreign investment and maybe enhances trade or whatever. But I gather that's his argument, right? And how is that part of his platform well received?
Well, I mean, yes, that's his argument. He basically did what Fox or Calderon were not able to do, and that's something that has to be recognized. As they wanted to pass big reforms, but they couldn't. So Peña Nieto came and he did, and he could, and those reforms are now in place. We'll see. I mean, these are big reforms, so we don't know. In the short run, we're not having any results. So these are reforms that are going to take a few years, for us to evaluate if they were good reforms or not. I just don't. I don't know how can I transmit this sort of popular feeling. Peña Nieto did good because he passed the reforms, but people, as I said, are very skeptic about things, and especially because we're not seeing any short-term results. It's very difficult to say he did good or not. And if you think about the whole violence issue and the whole, how are you going to attract foreign investment, for example, if Mexico is, absolutely out of control? And that's what everyone's asking. I mean,
And are the reforms he's done of the kind I described? Is it like deregulation? Is that the kind of thing he's done economically?
Yes, it's a lot about deregulation. It's about opening the energy market, which is a very contentious issue in Mexico. Historically, oil is a very, very contentious issue because it's a public good, and it had been for a long time a state-only enterprise. Right now, it has been open. The market, the energy market, has been open in a few areas, and that's basically what he did. He's trying, for example, to bring into the formal fiscal realm a lot of people that are working out of the system in terms of fiscally talking about it. They don't pay taxes. A lot of the Mexican working people are not paying taxes. So he's trying to do that. He's trying to try to get some more money for the state. But I don't think it's. It's very hard to say if it's going to work or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the current president is part of the party that has ruled Mexico for most of its history, the PRI. The previous president was not, and he was a real exception in that regard. And I gather maybe that's one reason he couldn't get his reforms passed. I don't know, is because it's harder if you're not in that party. But in any event, does this represent the PRI having moved to the right somewhat? The fact that they're embracing these reforms, has that been happening while they, maybe in response to not having the presidency for a while, or?
First of all, Calderon and Fox could not have the reforms because they were not. There were two different cases. Fox, I think, was a big coalition in terms of what can they do to improve Mexican political life and economic life. He was just not able to do that. Mm-hmm. And Calderon focused on security. And in the 12 years that the PAN had the presidency, the PRI, Peña Nieto's party, what they basically did was try to boycott every single attempt of reform.
Right.
So because they were a very strong political force in Mexico, they could do that.
Right.
So when Peña Nieto came to power, the PRI worked worked for Peña Nieto, and the reforms could pass. I wouldn't say easily, but in a sense easily. Mm-hmm. So the sense of the PRI being efficient was reinforced, and so I guess that was good for Peña Nieto and the PRI. Right now, that has, as I said, that has changed a lot because of these security things that have been going on in the past few months.
Okay, and finally, let's talk a little bit about technology, since that's what you're covering these days. Is technology in general, is it changing Mexico a lot? Electronic technology, communications technology, social networks, and so on.
I think it would be. It's interesting to see, for example, how social networks have been playing in this whole issue. For example, Twitter. Twitter is a technological tool that's being used by human rights groups, by the political class, by Enrique Peña Nieto, by everyone that's important in Mexico, in trying to put forth their points and their agenda. And yes, it has changed. We can see that there are many things that are being discussed in Twitter that matter. Twitter has been a very important source of information for traditional media as well. And so it has worked and it has changed a lot. And in a country in which there are not many direct channels for discussing and debating and trying to influence the public agenda, so I guess it's an important thing, because Twitter and people through Twitter have accomplished things that were unthinkable before.
So like right now, is the president feeling more pressure over this issue of the missing students than he would be feeling if there weren't the social networks?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm sure that he gets a report every day on the hashtags and the trending topics, and he's listening to that because he knows that people that matter, that political analysts, that opinion leaders, that human rights activists and organizations, and in general, informed public are in Twitter and are making their points there and are pressuring for a lot of things. Either is security, economic, the new airport, I mean, whatever. The public discourse is now on this particular social network, and it's a very important one.
Mm-hmm. So in the kind of fight between the people and the kind of organized crime network, I guess the social media, on balance, gives some strength to the people. I mean, I'm having trouble imagining how the organized crime people would make use of Twitter, but maybe they have a way. So does this actually change the balance of power a little?
I think it has. And I have to say as well that it's an interesting trend as well to see how just regular common people are using technology and social networks to protect themselves against organized crime, and they're feeling a vacuum left by the state, by the local authorities, or by the federal state, and they are trying to do their best on Twitter, for example. As I said, I mentioned before the activist that was murdered, and what these Twitter accounts basically do is that they inform the citizens if there's a blockage, if there's people are fighting on the streets. I mean, they just want to keep them safe. And I think that has given them a sense of empowerment that was not there before. And it has changed in a sense, yes, the balance of power. And I think we have to reinforce that. I mean, we have to sort of try to listen to those trends that are there, and we would never be able to listen to that if it weren't of these technological tools.
Okay, well, thank you. So I guess we end on a hopeful note then. That's good to hear. And is there well, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I mean, yes, I'm hopeful that just regular people try to do their best in a very difficult situation in terms of what they're living and what they're expecting their kids to live in a while, in a few years. It's not a very positive environment to grow up in, but I think people are trying to do their best. So, we have to focus on that, and we have to keep on working on that. Otherwise, we could only, leave the country and do that. But since we want to be here, and we want Mexico to be secure and prosperous, I mean, we have to work towards that every day.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. Does your writing on technology appear in English? And if so, where can people find it?
I've written some stuff for Slate, and I have a blog which is called Codigo Espagueti, but it's not in English; it's in Spanish. But I'm in Twitter. I'm at Ana F. Vega, Vega.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you, Bob.
Okay, take care.